Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsor, which is my very own t-shirt. It's on Redbubble. It's making fun of Taco Bell, Gundam, the most interesting man in the world, and Fallout, which are four of the things that I like. So you can go pick up that shirt right now on Redbubble in 16 different colors, as well as in a mini skirt, because why wouldn't I have it available as a mini skirt? But I'm not going to bore anybody else with the rest of my sponsors here. And I have with me legendary poster artist Justin Hampton. So welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
I am super stoked. I am excited that you're here, and my day is not too bad because we're about to talk about your entire career. You have a
Right.
book that is out there on Kickstarter called Visual Feast, and I think you're 73% funded. It's a
Yeah.
big goal. It's a $40,000 goal. And this book really documents your entire music poster career, as well as your poster career outside of music as well, over the last 30 years. So how did all of this come about? I think it's the only way I can start this entire interview.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, it was a big undertaking. I've been being asked for at least, oh God, maybe 15 years consistently from collectors of mine, when are you going to put out a book? You know what I mean? So it was one of those things that I'd always wanted to do, but the critical self in me was kind of like, you haven't done enough to merit a career spanning book. You know, I could have done an earlier book that would have chronicled what had happened up to that point, but I really was looking for some more momentous uh, achievements, basically, to be in the book before I would publish something like that. But I turns out many things came along that were big moments that after they came and went, I was like, okay, now that's like book worthy. You know what I mean? That's like a good cap. You know, one of which was the Pearl Jam 20 poster for their 20th anniversary show. Um, Another was being chosen for the Ween reunion shows when they got back together for a three poster stint. So those were like, okay, those are significant. You know, this is. Then I got asked to do a poster for Metallica, and as far as rock and metal goes, that's pretty huge. So these things just kind of kept coming and stacking up, and I was like, okay, we're getting to be this time. And then I was already working on it for about a year before the pandemic hit. Just started clicking away at it, you know what I mean? And then once the pandemic hit, I was definitely like, okay, I'm definitely going to finish this during this time. So it's just kept getting chipped away at, and here we are.
Yeah, and I think the next question that is logical is that obviously this is 30 years of your work.
You cut out for me a little bit. I don't know if it
I'm
was.
back. I'm back. It
Okay, there you
happens. As I was getting to it, and the logical position is that how did you even get involved in doing music posters and getting involved with all these bands? I mean, obviously, Queens of the Stone Age is a big one. Pearl Jam, Metallica, Motorhead. I think you've done something revolving around Kiss. I mean, the Audio Slave stuff is fascinating, also, and it's a big deal. And then obviously, people that I know are Snoop Dogg and Blink 182 as well. And so, how did you even get involved in this scene? Because you're one of the guys that I think people know your posters, but they might not know your name, if that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, everyone finds out about your work from different angles. You know, I've got people that have been following me for 30 years, some for 20, some for like a year. You know what I mean? So it's it's always there's always a certain turnover of people too that just come across your work and follow you for a while, and then either they move on to new things or they start a family and have kids and quit buying posters, or you know what I mean. And it might come around later and even say like, holy crap, you've done a lot since I last paid attention. You know what I mean? So it's all different, but it all started way back when I was in Seattle, just straight out of art school, doing illustration work and getting whatever I could get. And I'd always had a big interest in music, and that was part of my teenage years was going to punk rock shows in my small town that I lived in. And when I moved to Seattle, I started discovering that there was a big music scene that was happening there, and so that was a lot of that was highlighted by a local music magazine in Seattle called the Rocket Magazine. And I knew people that worked there. I knew people that had gotten illustrations in there. So I asked, just if I could show my portfolio, and they said yes. And I immediately started getting work doing just, little illustrations for next to nothing. You know what I mean? Like $35 or something like that. Which back then was probably like $75 today, but still, I'm that old. So, but, but, and so being a part of that scene, everyone that was in the Rocket was involved in music somehow, whether they were doing their own posters like Art Chantry or Jeff Kleinsmith, or if they were writers that also promoted shows at, venues or with promotion companies. And so I started getting asked to do flyers for bands, for just little shows of local bands, and not even any of the names that came later, And it was just another way to make some money and get my stuff out there. And I would see my illustration in the magazine where someone would go, "That's cool, you got this little illustration." But the thing that was instantly stimulating to me about doing stuff that went up on polls, where it was all around town, and I got people that would say like, "Holy crap, I see your stuff everywhere," because it was just being saturated on polls, tacked up, and so that was kind of cool. They were bigger, so that was kind of neat. And so I'd always loved doing art as a kid, and I'd always loved music. And so when that kind of really came together as something that clicked, it was kind of an epiphanous moment where I was like, "Holy crap, this is like bringing these two worlds together that I love," And it was instantly just like, standing back and watching people walk by and stop at a telephone pole, just being like, "Yeah, this is kind of neat. This is different. I'm getting the immediate, if I just hung out by one, I could see the immediate response." And it was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, and even going further into that, because obviously I think this was early 90s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, and the music scene was different back then, but it also has changed, but it hasn't changed in a lot of ways. And so what was it like being involved in that scene, and then also it evolving every 10 years or even more than every 10 years, and going through that? Because obviously people burn out and some people survive and
Right.
thrive and get to do all sorts of fun stuff. And you seem to have always thrived and have almost leveled up, to put it nicely. I mean, and like, what has that been like? Because you've seen so much. And this book,
Right.
in my opinion, is not just about the posters, but it's also about music history. It's also about how things have changed in the last 30 years. And even with
For
certain
sure.
bands, how things have changed, and even what can be put on a poster and how far can you push the line also.
Right. Yeah. No, this is all very true. I was really lucky to be at the right place and right time to see, the whole grunge era unfold basically before me. I mean, I got to Seattle when I was like 19, and I had no idea there was a music scene up there at all. I mean, I just knew that, Hendrix had come from there, and Hart came from there, and, a select few people that were considered classic rock at that point, you know what I mean? And I really didn't know much about the local scene. I just started listening to the local college radio, and, they would say local band, whoever, Soundgarden, Nirvana. And I'd be like, "You guys are local? Weird, that's cool." And I wasn't old enough to go to clubs. Most shows happened at 21 and over clubs. They had occasional all ages shows that were, soda pop shows or whatever, but they were really like rare. They had really, Seattle, the powers that be had really kind of like squashed anything all ages in a big way at that point. And so, so I turned 21 in 89. I'm 53 now. So it was an amazing time to be able to go into venues. I saw all of those bands in tiny clubs before they got big, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. I was at Pearl Jam's first show ever. I mean, Nirvana at tiny clubs. And, I didn't get super involved in the poster work at that point. I didn't see it as being any way to make money. I mean, it was just flyers, you know what I mean? There were certain people, Chantry doing screen prints, but it still wasn't really, I know he wasn't making much money doing that stuff, at that point. That stuff didn't come till later, and they become collectible as, holy crap, these bands are huge. They weren't. They were just local bands, So I just did illustration work and I did comic book work, and I wasn't really thinking that rock posters was going to be a thing. I really didn't at that point. I just did them because they were fun, you know. And
Well,
yeah,
when did you know they were becoming a thing? Because that's the thing, is that obviously I collect comic books and I collected Pokemon cards, and now that's a thing. And obviously I have a bunch of stuff that's worth money now, and people
right,
want their old cards, and I kind of want them too, and they're
right,
fun. And but when I was collecting, I viewed it as a hobby when I'm 5, 6 years old, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. My mom and dad are taking me to the gas station, and I'm getting this pack of cards. And I
right,
didn't know anything about it. I'm like, man, this card looks awesome. Turns out they
right.
got like a $300 card. But
Yeah,
when did you know that this isn't just fun, but people want to collect this stuff, and that it's a collectible, and that also
right.
people want it in pristine condition? And
Yeah,
it's not also, they don't necessarily even want to sell it. They want it for themselves as well. And they also like the fact that it's limited and it's from the time stain, not stain, but time area. And even if it's a little beat up, it also has that like sentimental value. And like, when did
right.
that really click in? Because that must be very cool
Yeah.
for you.
I mean, it was, I'd seen that as well, like you're saying, with the comic book world. I mean, when I discovered that there were comic book shops, that there was more than just going to the little flip stand at the corner market, you know, that you could actually go immerse into that world and comic values and all that stuff. That was my first kind of taste of seeing that collectible market. But for posters, it was literally the Rocket magazine had done a uh, piece in one of the issues. I want to say like 92 or three, and they had covered everyone at that point that was involved in the poster scene, like Frank Kozik and Coop and Derek Hess and Chantry, and I was like, holy crap, this is like a thing. It's like, because when I thought of posters, I was like punk rock flyers or the '60s posters from way back when. I didn't think like this would be a thing for the '90s at that point. I was just doing flyers for an extra $20 and some free beer, for the venue or whatever. And so I saw these and I was like, holy crap, that's cool. I mean, as an illustrator, even like, from the ego sense of seeing like a little tiny illustration in a corner of a magazine versus a big poster that's now screen printed versus just a black and white, it suddenly became a tangible, like, these are a collectible item, and yeah, it became that article really was like, I want to do this. I want to be a part of that, and take this to the next level with that. So I started at the time they had done a poster ban in Seattle. Like they had made it so because the telephone poles were getting so packed with flyers because Seattle was kind of blown up in the music scene that the poles would be bulging out all around. And occasionally someone would come by and set them on fire. So it would be like a flaming fat middle pole, and then it was just this charred thing, and it was just ugly. But they were like, we got to get rid of this. This is making the town ugly. You know what I mean? And of course, then everyone that was part of the scene was like, holy crap, how are we going to advertise our shows now? You can't put stuff on, you're going to get a ticket for putting stuff on poles. Like, so what they did was the hot spots became the record store windows, maybe grocery store windows, maybe boutique windows where there was really limited amount of space in windows that where everyone was vying for space and going in and asking if they could put their stuff up. So the promoters were suddenly like, we need to make more impact with this, 20 places we can put stuff up or less. So they were like, we'll pay to get it screen printed if you're willing to do something. So that was like a big moment too, where I was like, screen printed, crazy. And then it was like, holy crap, I get black and red. This is amazing. Like, look how different it looks with red on it. And that was like a big deal. But
And
then,
also, I would imagine that if it was hung up on in a grocery store or a record store, there was also the idea that it might be in better condition, the poster. It also
right,
might last longer. It's not going to weather as much. And
right.
it's
Because
also
it's
going to,
inside the walls. Yeah,
and so that also creates a whole collectible thing. And then,
yep,
obviously, somebody who likes a certain band who may be the record store owner might want to keep the poster, and they might
right.
even keep it up even longer per se than was required, and it creates a whole very interesting dynamic. Um, And
For sure.
obviously, we're going to go through some of your posters in a second, but I am curious because obviously, before we go through it, what makes a good poster? Because I think that's what everybody wants to know. Because obviously, you've evolved from, doing illustrations and comic book work all the way up to doing posters and then getting it, I think, silk screened on there and having more colors. And obviously, you came in when posters needed to be better and they needed to make more of an impact. And really, I think it was the perfect timing because if they were still on polls, that wouldn't have been the case. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the posters weren't good then either, but there was the right time and the right place where now they needed to be that way.
Right.
And the
For sure.
quality of printing was there too.
For sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think there's for me, I can only answer for what I think makes a good poster. You know what I mean? There's so many people doing it now. There's so many different styles and approaches that I don't think there's any one right answer for that. For me, it was always about impact. For me, it was always about stopping you in your tracks and making you want to stand there and look at it and know what the show information was, but also just kind of stand there and trip out on what this was about. You know what I mean? And so it was all about that, almost like 20-foot grab your attention rule, which in art school, I remember a great quote from Milton Glaser that was, if a poster can't grab your attention from across the street, it has failed its job. I think that makes sense for a time and a place. You know what I mean? Like, of course, that's the main. That's an older quote from someone that did stuff very graphic. But that it impacted me. That was like, okay, that's my job. Early on was to just grab attention. So the images were always big and bold and bright and trying to pull the viewer in walking down the sidewalk. You know what I mean? So in the initial, as time went on, my stuff became a lot more nuanced, a lot more colors. I eventually moved from hand cutting everything with Rubylith overlays, which is very labor intensive and simple, to moving around 2002 to doing stuff in the computer with layers and Photoshop and adding way more detail than I could ever add in just overlays of hand cut X-Acto knife Rubylith overlays, So it gave me a lot more room to create and experiment and do more nuanced work as well,
Yeah, that's actually very interesting because obviously, going and then introducing computer stuff into there too, and then going into digital drawing and even what you could do there, and then using shapes and other things, obviously, because I think that creating a poster is both artistic as well as also understanding just how something visually looks. And when I see a poster or I see a comic cover, I don't really care if it's drawn or if it's computer drawn or if it's an abstract shape or if it's a combination of it, because if it's a stark image, that's what I care about, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And because I think it's also the idea that I'm not an artist. So even if somebody took an already existing thing and then turned it upside down and moved it around and played around with it, they still had to come up with the concept in their head. And just because
Absolutely.
they use something as an assistive tool doesn't mean that
Right.
they didn't create. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And there's so many people that are doing pure digital art now. I'm not one of them. I don't do the art on the computer directly. I still hand draw and hand ink and do all that hands-on approach, but then I scan it into the computer, and that's where I do all the color scheme, color separations and all that kind of stuff. And part of that's just the fact that I come from a different era, and the other part of that is also it's commerce. I mean, I sell my original art, so if I didn't have an original, that would be a loss of an income stream as well. So so I have a tangible original, and then I have what's done in the computer that goes to another tangible item that's a screen printed, signed and numbered tactile item that's a 1 of 100. So it's very the essence of it is still very old school. You know what I mean? But I use technology to not only do more colors and nuance and whatnot, and it also speeds up my process, which has been a game changer entirely.
Yeah, no, and I think this is something that obviously I've been speaking to a lot of people because I speak to a lot of people in the comic realm, and we talk about income streams. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people, because a lot of people are doing indie comics, are not good at business. And what you just did is that you obviously have the original art that you could sell, or if you really love the piece, you might keep it for yourself. If you're like,
Yeah.
I really love this, or you're a huge fan of a particular band, or it's something special to you, you might keep
Right.
it for yourself. Or and then what you also do is you do exclusive print runs, essentially
Mhm.
with posters and other things, and that's a whole nother ball game too. I love exclusivity. When I buy and sell comics, I only buy for the most part about 95% of what I buy and sell on eBay. It has a limited print run at 250 or 350 print run in
Okay.
comic books because
Cool.
there's a lot more fans than 350. Therefore, the demand is there. And
Right.
I'm buying a poster by somebody and it's a 250 print. No, it's actually a 450 print right now that I think about it. It's an awesome battle royale
Okay.
poster by Kevin Tong, I want to say, and
Okay. Yeah.
it and Brian O'Malley Lee. I think guy did Scott Pilgrim style. Great
Right.
poster, super cool.
Cool.
And at some point, I'm going to buy something from you at some point, but that's
Right.
not the point.
Right.
I digress right there.
Well, you got a book, so you're off to a good start.
I don't know which one I want yet. Let's
Okay.
leave it at that. And then also I need to
Right.
figure out where I'm going to hang it up first.
Nice.
Third world problems, guys. Third world problems. But that's something that I think is very interesting and very important because I think a lot of creators, especially in the art field, need to understand how you make money. And
Right.
you obviously have figured that out. Whether that's old school, I kind of call it new school in a lot of ways, where this is just business and everybody can learn a lesson from you on what you're doing in a lot of ways. And if you're an artist, you have to figure out how to monetize yourself to the fullest extent. And I
Right.
think it's a real skill when people figure out how to do it. And it's very important because I don't want artists to starve.
Right. Yeah. It's a very tricky thing because I mean, what I'm doing is less advertisement than it used to be. It used to be literally for the show to get people to go. Now, the majority of what I would call what I do is almost like merchandise because they're sold at the show by the band. And part of which that is driven by the record sales have gone, nowhere basically with everything becoming streaming services. There's the main stream of money that bands make now is merch sales and ticket sales. Not on the record sales because the streaming just doesn't give them anything. And so it's become an item now that shows up at the show and it's a collectible for the experience they had at that show, that particular night, or even if it's a tour poster of the whole tour. But that's newer in this, in this world of rock posters in the last 20 years. But yeah, no, it's a trick because it's definitely kind of like blending the world of like fine art and commerce, and you have to be able to promote yourself. You have to be able to get your stuff out there. And the cool thing is that 30 years ago, I mean, there was just no way to monetize it. There was a few galleries, that sold that kind of stuff, and you would just send a tube of posters to them, and maybe they liked a few, and maybe they put a few up in their window, and then maybe they'd come back and ask for more, and that was it. But they're like, three or four of them, you know what I mean? And that was like, and you were selling them at wholesale to them, and they were selling them at retail, so everyone was making a cut. So there was really barely any money in there for anything. Now, young artists can, get on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, and there's all these like tools that they can get their word out there and show off their wares. eBay, I mean, it's just endless now, which is great because I mean, there's all these people that are actually able to make a living doing it. And unless you knew someone in a gallery setting back in the day, that just wasn't accessible to your average aspiring artist. You either got somehow highlighted by a magazine that covered you, and suddenly people were, beating down your door, or you were just kind of like not getting anything. You know, So it's a brand new world, and it's awesome. It's revolutionized my work. That didn't happen for me until about 2000, when I built a website and like started, collecting email addresses from people and getting an email subscriber list. And that stuff is just invaluable. It's so important. and have that communication regularly with the fans and collectors, and engage people on Facebook and Instagram. And I've made awesome friends with some of these people too that I've known for 20 plus years and longer. That I've had shows in different towns and stayed at people's houses. I mean, you get to know these people. It's really cool. It's a community.
It's kind of like, I don't know if you're a wrestling fan, but back in the day, there was all these wrestlers who used to stay at all these people's houses, and these are just fans like, hey, yeah, Mick Foley wants to stay at my house.
That's awesome.
It's
I've
kind
done
of
it.
crazy. But the idea is that, so now a lot of wrestlers back like in the 80s and early 90s didn't stay in hotels because they made friends with all these fans, and they would stay in their house for the night, and they would go to the show, and then when they were back in town again, they would stay back at their house. And it's like, I would love to host a wrestler in my house. I think it'd be fantastic. I mean, and then fast forward, that wrestler then becomes the WWE champ. You don't think that wrestler is not going to remember that they stayed at your house? And
Right,
so
right.
it's kind of a funny thing. And it's a very weird world. And it's hiking and going down that path. And I think it's super interesting.
Yeah,
And obviously, I mean, you're doing something absolutely fascinating. And I couldn't agree more. And I also think what's also happened is that there's shows like Pawn Stars that have showcased massive
yeah,
value posters, and
true.
there's other collectibles. And I think Rally is a big thing where, and for those who don't know what Rally is, they basically buy an asset and they break it up into shares. And they bought posters that are worth a lot of money, also,
Cool.
and broken up into shares. And so I think that's also helped in a lot of ways give credibility to the collectability of some
For
of
sure.
this stuff. And your stuff is somewhat collectible as well because it's
Yeah,
limited and it's hard to find some of this stuff. And obviously, some of your stuff's expensive too. And
right.
that's why the book is very, very helpful. And even
Cool.
to dive into that, before we really talk about the poster stuff, which is what I want to talk about and show pictures. And there's one particular poster art slash print that I love. And I know what it's referencing. That's why I like it so much. Um,
Nice.
it may or may not have been a reference to Free Comic Book Day, is what I'm going to throw out there. It's a hint. And I think you know which one I'm talking about. But to even talk about the book, because it's not just your posters, and
Right.
it's 400 pages. It's also some sketches of this stuff. It's also some stories. And so,
Right.
what was like with this? Because I don't think the posters was the hard part of this book. I think the hard part was the stories and finding some of this stuff, and possibly clearing it with some of these people also might have been slightly complicated. Um, but also even just picking the order and things of that nature, and given the background behind it. And because that's what's so cool about this book is that I don't know all your poster work. I'm super excited to see it, but I'm also very curious about your input on it and what was going on and the stories behind it. Because as I
Cool.
stated, this is not just posters, it's not just art, it's also
Right.
music history and a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah. That was kind of my goal in creating the book. Was any of the books I've read on artists that go into some of the stories behind creating certain works and the sketches and maybe photos that were referenced or what. I always find that stuff super interesting. The human tale, the story behind it. So that was my intent from the beginning, was to tell some of this stuff. And honestly, it was a monumentous undertaking. It was like standing at the bottom of Mount Everest and looking up, going, "How do I get up there?" And you just gotta put one foot in front of the other to start walking. That's how I find it was just like, okay, I just need to start assembling all of the posters. Some of the older stuff I had to go get scanned, professionally, and because that was pre-digital, that was all hand done. And then just like raking through my brain for illustrations that I hadn't thought about in forever, and then trying to organize how this was going to be built into sections that was loosely chronological, and it was a big undertaking. It was huge. But as I started getting going, I was suddenly, holy crap, I'm 50 pages in. Wow, I'm 100 pages in. Geez, this is like coming along.
So
And
let
then,
me ask you the question: was the book always intended to be 400 pages, or was it along the line saying, "Look, I'm gonna do however big this book is however big it's gonna be, and I'm making the call on the determination of how big this thing is going to be," versus you only had 100 pages worth of posters, it would only be 100 pages. You know what I mean? Versus
Yeah.
it's now 400 pages. You know,
Right.
in which that it's really was that always your intention to make it a big book, or did it just take care of itself?
I mean, kind of both, honestly, because by the time I got to making the book, I knew the history of my work was, long enough that it was going to take some serious wood, some paper to show it all off, So, there's going to be some trees that are going to die to this thing. So, but I was actually offered shorter books by various publishers early on, where it was like 100-page book, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I want a definitive, tome, a book that's like encapsulates everything up until now. So that was the intention. So I just kind of had a feeling it was going to be about 400 pages. But I was like, if it ends up being less, that's cool. If it ends up being more, okay, And it just kind of, it might. Go ahead.
Oh no, you. I interrupted you, so please continue.
Well, I'm still finishing the last portion of it because it's 385 pages that are finished, and I've got some more stuff to write, and I'm going to do that once the Kickstarter closes. I'm going to take like a month and finish the thing. It might go over 400 pages. It might be longer. I don't know, but it's definitely going to be 400 minimum. It might be 420. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you should put a leaf at the back. If it's 420 on the dot, you should just put like a leaf right on the back.
Right.
But
it's been fun.
But this is so interesting because what I like is that it's obviously a hardbound book. It's also 11 by 14, and so it's a little bit bigger and
Right.
also gives more detail. And I like the fact that you decided to go more indie with it and go on Kickstarter as well, because I don't think there's anything wrong with you doing this book into 4 parts. And I don't think that if at some point you say, hey, look, I'm going to go and bring this to another publisher and they want to break up the book, I don't think there's anything wrong with that book. I mean, there's been other books by people that have done that. And it makes sense sometimes, both on cost and also different errors and things of that nature. But I also like the fact that this is sort of the definitive one. You know what I mean? And I think it's very important sometimes to do things on your own term. One of the things is that this is my show. Some guests have book guaranteed spots, but I really make the final call on my show. Nobody tells me who to interview, when to interview, how to interview. And I don't know sponsorship. When I used to have sponsors, they come and go. They don't tell me what I can and can't say. And if a sponsor does do that, I'm not interested in working with you, and I'll refund you your entire money. And I think it's very important to be able to do that. And I even think when you're doing a poster to some degree, you have to have some control with that, in which that you have to say, hey, this is how I do it. And if you don't want to work with me, that's fine. You don't like it, that's cool. But, and it's obviously a collab with the band. You can't put a Rolling Stones thing on a Linkin Park poster, for lack of a better word. I mean, unless Rolling Stones is, the Rolling Stones are totally like, that's a great idea. We're totally it. If they're cool with it, and
everyone's signing off. Sure. That would be a strange one to see, though.
I'm just saying, if they're down for it, but not the point. The point I'm getting at is that obviously, I think that's kind of your path in a lot of ways, and I respect the fact that you're doing this on your terms and not somebody else's, because I think it is so important in today's society, especially if you're an artist and you've put in the work, that you say, hey, this is how I'm running my business and my attitude, and it comes through, I feel, in this project.
Thanks. No, it's basically, I mean, it's how I've worked for the last 30 years, to just independently and, making my own schedule, choosing which bands I want to work with. I mean, I've been offered, working with certain bands that I'm just like, I'm not really interested. It's not my taste, And I've done a few for bands I didn't really care for. I won't say who, but they were gigs that were just gigs. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because one of the things that I've come across when talking to collectors of my work is that there's a lot of people that are like, I love your taste in music because it's like my taste in music. So I feel like you get me. You know what I mean? And you work with these certain bands that I love. and it's this very specific kind of like bandwidth, and I could totally relate to that. And that's been so cool to hear, because most of the stuff I do is, the taste that I have in music, so I mean, there's certain bands that I've loved to work for that I've never worked for, but the ones that I've worked for the most part have been bands that I actually like. Disclaimer, a few that I haven't.
And then I believe you and me both have to issue everybody an apology right now, because the first 100 books haven't sold out with the print. So I'm sorry to everybody. Yeah. If you didn't know, you didn't know. I got mine, so I don't really care about anybody else. So I'm very excited. It's obviously
the first 100 posters are gone. That went fast, which was cool. It was really cool.
And then a bunch of other stuff went with, I think your Nirvana stuff went as well. And certain things were pretty much sold out on this entire Kickstarter, which is crazy. That I think it was like 8 hours? Like half of this stuff pretty much sold out.
It went pretty fast. Yeah, it's really cool. The support's been pretty overwhelming, which is great.
And so I just wanted to let everybody know that if you missed the cool print and the poster stuff, I think there might not even be anything left from the other stuff out there. So, but you can still get the book. There's
the book, and there's the main edition poster of the book illustration. There's the main edition Nirvana. I have to look, but there's still some stuff. But yeah, quite a few have sold out, which is super cool. Yeah, very fun.
I want to get into some of the poster stuff that's actually in this book. Hopefully it's in the book. And obviously, we talk about Stark Images, and this is the one that I think stands out really, really, really nicely as soon as I find it. And this is the one I think starts off everything, because the Stokes. And I just absolutely love this entire, poster.
Thanks. It was the Strokes in Hamburg and Berlin, so two nights, and I really wanted to do something that captured they kind of had this Velvet Underground sound, and so the Andy Warhol album cover with the banana came to mind, and I wanted to do something that was a little racy with the banana, and everyone knows, from various movies, that girl with the banana thing, and I just thought that would be a clever
hey. I thought it was a PG poster. Completely PG, guys.
Nope. PG-13, maybe.
My entire childhood has just been ruined, clearly.
But no, so it was a fun thing to do. So my then wife posed for this, and I stylized it, and I had the fashion magazine that she's holding, because the Strokes seemed a very high fashion New York band, coming from the Upper East Side or whatever. So I added that little flair to it, and the little cool tattoo on the belly, and it was a fun design. It was really fun to come up with, and it sold awesome. So that was a big one.
Because that's kind of iconic designs, and also pushing the line, I feel. And obviously that's where we go. And then obviously we really go into a bunch of fun stuff too. And then another few of my favorites that you've done is really the Audio Slave stuff.
Thanks.
This right here is that poster as well. I think this is more, I'm not too sure which one's the variant or which one's the print. So there's that one, and then there's this right here, which I just think is awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, when it was Jermaine Rogers, Emick, and I got hired to do that tour as our collective called Post Neo Explosionism, or PNE. And when we were asked to do the series, the theme that they wanted was a very 60s kind of psychedelic theme. So we worked with those kind of color palettes and psychedelic text, and it turned out really fun. In fact, we ended up getting Stanley Mouse to do a poster for that series as well, to have an actual 60s guy in the mix. So that was really fun to have an excuse to hire someone that's a hero to all of us, to be a part of it. So it was a super fun series.
Yeah, because those things are just super cool. And also, it's kind of like you hang that up on your wall, it catches everybody in the room's eye in a lot of ways, whether somebody knows Audio Slave or not. It just catches somebody's eye. And that's what I think makes a really good poster is that
Right.
to me, if I hang up a poster, whether on a wall or somewhere, or I guess my man cave, I want if I come into it, someone's like, "Oh man, that poster looks awesome. What is that
Right.
poster?" I want it to become a talking point.
Well,
And you're saying something?
no, I just said right. I agree.
And then also, I mean, there's just all these other iconic, bands that you've done. Obviously, this right here, which is Queens of the Stone Age, and obviously, there's a lot of stuff you've done for them.
Yeah.
And so, what is this? Because this at this point, obviously, I think they're your taste in music by far. The amount of work
Yeah.
that you've done for them, the amount of posters, and I
Right.
think you've known them for at least 10 years, if not 20, if not 30.
20. Yeah. In fact, this summer will be the 20th anniversary of the first poster I ever did for him with the Cave Girl poster. But yeah, that one. That was the very first one I did for him. That will be 20 years ago this June. Crazy.
And then there's
2002.
this one too, which is
Yeah,
on the Kickstarter.
that was
And
the last one I've done for them. Yeah. Yeah, I've done 31 posters for that band over the years. It's the most I've done for any band.
so what is that like to have done so much work for them? You've done work for other people who have come in and out of them. You've done some other stuff. Obviously, this right here, which is an awesome, awesome, I think print. I think it is. I don't know if
Yep.
this is a poster. Um,
Screen print. Yep.
I don't know what that's referencing. I don't know what that one's referencing, but I know what this one is.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty clear what this is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It-
In fact, the year before doing this poster, I had met the guy that illustrated all the Conan comics from the 70s and 80s, John Buscema. Before he passed away, I met him at the San Diego Comic Con, and I got a chance to meet him and talk to him and take a photo with him. And he was super cool and super supportive. And I mean, he was such a childhood hero reading those comics, Conan and Avengers and all the comics he did, when I was a kid. And he was a big hero of mine, how to draw Marvel the comics way, or how to draw comics the Marvel way. And so to meet him was just so cool and so inspiring, and he really liked my work, and that was so amazing. I was on a cloud nine for weeks after that. It was just so cool.
So to even talk about this and this stuff, because obviously this right here, I feel everybody can connect to on a poster level. And obviously this one here is Conan, Red Sonja oriented.
Right.
It's pretty crystal clear that from a mile out, you can see what this is. And
Right.
even this as well, I'm not exactly sure who this is referencing, but it is comic book vibe, for lack of a better word. And
It's actually it's an image pulled from a comic book that I worked on, a short story in a comic called Tales from the Edge with Vanguard Press. And I just like the image. And so, I was on a deadline and I was doing 12 posters, was it 10 or 12 posters for a Canadian tour for Queens. And I was knocking it out in a month. So I was like, oh shit, I really need to pull something from somewhere because I'm stressing out about this deadline, getting these things illustrated and printed in 30 days. It was a daunting task. So that one was one where like, do I have an image I can just pull out of somewhere? And so I pulled that one out and then I was like, okay, she's got a gun. It's a cool image, but if I make the text all like it's shattering glass, like she's standing in front of a window and then, blasting it with her gun and then walking into the, room through the shattered glass, that would be a really cool image, So that's what made that. That was necessity of time. Which has happened more than once.
Isn't that so the greatest thing is that when you're under so much pressure that you run out of ideas and you're like,
yes.
fuck it. I'm gonna throw shit on a wall and see what happens, right? And
right.
nothing against anybody, but it's like time and pressure tends to create diamonds in a lot of ways. And it's just one of those things. And it's an awesome, awesome poster in a lot of ways. And it's an awesome print because it's kind of like, that's super cool. Like it's such a simple idea, yet I wouldn't even know where to think about that and how to produce that. My
Right.
brain doesn't work that way, guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't have come up with that poster had it not been just sheer, not only necessity of deadline, but then I had this image that how can I make this image work on a poster? Regular text would be boring. So if I made it into shattering glass, now the concept is tied in together, and it's the text is now atmospheric and it's part of the illustration, you know. So, but yeah, it's kind of wild how sometimes stuff like that just clicks on the fly, you know.
And then even going further into, Queens of the Stone Age, I mean, obviously they've been around forever, and then you've done so many posters for them, and they're the most band that you've ever done posters for. So what is that like? Because you're part of their history too.
Yeah,
And obviously they must like you at this point because they wouldn't keep asking you to come back and keep on doing posters.
yeah,
And
for sure.
so what is that like to be like, oh man, because obviously their fans must know your work as
Right.
well. And it must be a very cool feeling for you.
It's
That
super fun. It's an honor. I mean, and that's kind of what I was saying about like working for bands that I actually like, because there's a tangible love that I think comes across, you know, for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? When you're actually super into it, you know. And and yeah, no, that I mean that was that's an awesome relationship for sure, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
and then obviously you also had a relationship with Mark.
yeah,
And obviously I think Mark passed away
yeah,
just recently,
yeah,
but you've done a lot of stuff with him for his
yep,
band and his projects. And then
right,
obviously I think these two I think are Prince, I believe.
yep.
Um, but then
Those
this
are the small handbills, and the other one's the big poster. Yeah,
Yeah, and then obviously this is a poster. I don't know if this is his single poster or his band's poster.
that
But
was the art print version of a band poster. Yeah,
and then that's another one. And then obviously there's this right here.
right.
And then I think you did this one too.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
so a lot of fun stuff that you've
Yeah.
done. I think I might be getting it, but I think also this is something that it's
Yep.
just sort of creepy as fuck, man. Like
Thank you.
just like super trippy.
Right.
But obviously, what was this like? Because obviously, he is a friend of yours, and
Yeah.
you've known him forever too.
Yeah, I've known Mark personally since '98, since the first poster I did for him in Seattle back then, and he was a part of Queens of the Stone Age in the early albums, and so I would see him at those shows, and it was. I mean, I've been a fan of Mark's work since I first landed in Seattle. You know, one of the first big shows I saw was Screaming Trees with Soundgarden and Tad in 1989. So the history of him being a part of my life's music soundtrack was already in place before I even met him personally, you know. And so, you know, I was a fan first and foremost, you know. So when I finally started doing stuff for him and for Queens of the Stone Age, it was just another amazing thing to be a part of. And, you know, when we finally like really kind of started working together, when we exchanged information to work directly together instead of with the venue or whatever other, you know, realm with Queens of the Stone Age, we finally exchanged info in like what was it, '09 or something like that. And I was like, you know, let's make that the regular thing. It's going to bring you a lot more income on your tours to have an item, you know, like that available at every show. You know, because when I went to his show in that year, he had CDs. You know, he had a couple T-shirts, but that was it. And I was like, you're missing a major income stream here, dude. And he was like, okay, let's do it. You know, it sounds great to me. You know, I loved all the stuff he did for Queens, so let's make it happen.
So this is actually interesting, and I think it goes back to the earlier thing that I was bringing up is that it also I'm a strong believer that the way I make money is by making somebody else money. And I
Yeah,
think that people in business, everybody can win.
right,
In a good business deal, I don't think you have to screw the other guy and walk
right.
away with all the money. And it seems that, obviously you're like, hey, I can build you an item and you're missing like, yeah. And obviously people want these posters and people are willing to spend real money for them.
Right.
And so that's something that I think is also interesting that you have thought about that because I mean, not to put the music industry down, but again, the record companies and other companies have legitimately screwed musicians hundreds of millions of dollars of sales by having, Amazon Music stream your music now. And I don't think that's a secret. I don't think that I'm breaking any new ground by saying that.
Right.
And so obviously, if you're a musician, you need other merchandise. You need
Right.
the T-shirts. You also need something that is exclusive or is eye-catching. If you have a
Right.
generic T-shirt, no offense, I'm probably not going to be interested. If you have a super limited T-shirt that has some serious killer art on it, now
Right.
we're getting somewhere. And I
Yeah,
think
for
that's
sure.
something that is, what you hit in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, it was really that was one of my favorite relationships that I've had in this game working with Mark, because he was so stoked about it, because we had a very kindred thing going on in that he'd had big ups and downs in his music career, and he'd gotten to the point where he was just kind of, almost representing himself and doing it all kind of DIY, and we had a very shared history in that way with, I've had huge moments in the 90s where things were really going crazy, and then I've had moments where things were a lot slower, and we really kind of related on that front. And we had these great conversations on the phone that would last, an hour or more, where we just kind of bullshit about our life experiences. And we became really good friends. It was really, really cool. And I miss him. I'm so bummed that he's not with us anymore. His talent was so unbelievable. He was relentless in searching for new things to try in his music and change. And he was always super stoked and directly involved with, whatever I would create to bring to the table to go along with his themes, and he was a really cool guy. He wrote an amazing intro for the book for me and was so excited about doing it, which was just amazing. As a hero of mine, as someone I really, really loved his music, and was proud to work with, it was just so cool for him to just be so excited about contributing. He was a really loyal friend and a really passionate dude, just such a cool guy. And I'm always going to miss him from this point forward. It's just a bummer he's no longer here.
It's kind of crazy where, the saying is that you never know when somebody's going to be gone the next day.
Yeah.
In the comic world, we've lost a lot of good people this year. Neil Adams, George Perez,
Yep.
and it's not getting any easier. And obviously,
Right.
I'm smart enough to know that I'm a huge Danny O'Neill fan, and that's an old school comic thing. And I was fortunate enough to interview Danny, and I realized that a lot of people as they get older, and even when
Right.
they're younger, anything could happen.
Yep.
And you got to cherish the moments, even if it's an
For
hour,
sure.
or even if it's 5 minutes. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy because people are legitimately here today and gone tomorrow. So obviously, and also it's crazy who is willing to try things, and a lot of people I feel, and I'm getting sort of sick of the indie world to some degree, because especially in Kickstarter, everybody's become corporatized and everybody is not willing to take risks and push the line. And when you
Right.
find people who are willing to, it's always a good time. And there's certain projects that really, I feel, are game changers.
Right.
But obviously, talking about big moments for you, there's two that I want to talk about. And obviously, we got to talk about Motorhead, because
Cool.
Motorhead is something very special. I have a relationship. I am a Triple H fan. So it's
Nice.
time to play the game.
Cool.
Hey, it's all about the game, and now we're playing.
Right.
So what was that about? Because obviously, whether you like Motorhead or you hate Motorhead, Motorhead is Motorhead, and
Right.
they're beyond special, and they're an amazing band. Lemmy is crazy. Is a nice
Absolutely. No, Lemmy was a really amazing, not only musician and a living legend at the time, an icon, but he was such a cool guy. He was such a nice guy, and very passionate about music in general. And getting to work with him was a thrill, just an absolute thrill. And I had done some work for him that I had brought to him that was kind of like for promoters or whoever. that was the first one that I got to work with him directly on, and getting emails in my inbox that said from Lemmy. I couldn't help but hear it in his voice, like from Lemmy. It was like the clouds were parting and God was speaking to me via email or something. It was awesome.
So what is that like? Because obviously Motorhead is considered to be one of the greatest bands of all time,
Yeah.
and it's the idea that you're getting to do posters for them and getting to work with them. You even get an email from them. I mean, it's I don't know how to explain that, but like unless like when I reach out to a big celebrity and I get an email back like, yeah, I'll come on your show. It's so like nice, and I'm like, I'm this small time nobody, and here I am, and somebody wants to talk to me or even wants to hire me. And also, it's the idea that I don't know when that poster was done, but it wasn't done yesterday. I mean, it was done at least, I think, 10 years ago minimum, if
Yeah.
not longer. And
Mhm.
we're still talking about it. And people know that poster. I mean, Motorhead fans know that poster. There's no question about it. So, what is that like for you? Because that's going to live on forever in a lot
It's
of ways.
it's a thrill. It's amazing. It really is. I mean, to just have done work for him was amazing, and to actually know him personally, and when he would come to town, whether it was with Motorhead or any of his other projects, I mean, I'd drop in and say hey, and he always remembered me. He was always super cool and wanted to chat, and just such a personable, cool guy, and that was another rough one when he went away, when he passed. But I'm just thankful that I got to play the smallest part in his visual history, at least. It was a thrill. Truly.
And then another big moment is Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
And there's that one, which is just an awesome poster in a lot of ways. And then this one's cool too, which is the 20th anniversary, which I think
Right.
is even cooler. And there's a few others that I don't have here, but even working for Pearl Jam, because that's another band that's been around forever
Yeah,
and will always be remembered in a lot of ways.
for sure. Yeah, that's actually the T-shirt I think from the poster. Yeah, but there
I
was
was extremely lazy, guys. I was extremely lazy.
first. No, that's a poster on a T-shirt. Is what that
Yeah.
is. Nice. Nicely done. No, that was like I said, I was at the very first Pearl Jam show way back in the day when they were called Mookie Blaylock, and it was just I was a fan of Mother Love Bone, the first band that Jeff and Stone were in, and so I heard they were going to have something new, and I just lived up the hill from where the venue was, and me and my brother and a friend all walked down there and saw this new version, or new incarnation, of their music, and it was cool. And I worked for the merch company. Like my first screen printing was working for a T-shirt printer back then, Jim Sorensen, in the back of the Tattoo Emporium, and he printed all the stuff for all the bands that were in Seattle at that point, and that's where I learned to screen print. And I was what he used to call us. I was one of his print monkeys, or his
So
minion.
let's even talk about that because this is actually really interesting. So I'm a strong believer that if you're running any business, so if you're running sales or you're running a podcast editing company or you're doing something in art or something, one of the things that you should know every single role and you should
Right.
not ask somebody to do something that you haven't already done. So
Right.
I have used to hire editors for my other show. And so I had no problem telling my editor what I wanted, or if I needed it to be redone, or if it wasn't up to, I guess, code for lack of a better word, because
Right.
I used to edit my own stuff. And so I understand that process. And at some
Yeah.
point, when I get more money and this thing is a lot more financially stable, I am going to go and hire an editor. But
Yeah.
I've done it myself. And I think it's very important, even if you don't want to ever do it again, that you go through the process.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're running your Kickstarter or you got help, but I ran my first Kickstarter in
Oh,
January.
nice.
I did $813. It wasn't that complicated to run, but the idea is that if at some point if I go hire somebody to do it, I have the experience of running it myself. Now I understand why people
Right.
don't do it. I get it.
Right.
I'm not faulting, but I do think it is important at least to
Yeah.
understand how it's running and understanding the process. to some
Right.
degree. And you could get that process without having to run it yourself, because you could be like, oh my God, is this thing gonna fund? Every 5 seconds you're checking. I don't know if you're that type of person where every hour you're checking and seeing if it goes up or down.
I mean,
It,
a little bit, honestly, but I'm lucky. I have a really good team that is doing all the PR
But
and
you,
marketing
you
and
you
stuff.
get where I'm going with this, where I think it is important, because I don't think you're necessarily doing the screen printing yourself at the moment,
No, no, I've done it way back in the day, and
but you know
get the
how it's supposed
process.
to work.
Exactly.
And
Yes,
it's important because when you know how it's supposed to work, you understand that there's somebody doing it. So if there's a little bit of a mess, or if it's taking a day longer, you're not going to blast them to shreds, for lack of
right,
a better word, because you
for sure.
understand things go wrong.
Right, and it's also understanding what's possible and what's not possible. I mean, I've talked to a lot of the printers I've worked with over the years, and they're just like, you just are just blown away at the kind of stuff that has thrown in your lap, and they're like, make this happen, and it's not prepared for printing whatsoever. And they're like, your stuff is always dialed, and there's no issues. It's just straight to printing. But yeah, knowing the process is huge for sure.
Because I think it's the idea that once you know it, you understand, and you say, look, there's somebody working here, and I
Right,
did this 20 years ago, so I'm not gonna blast them to hell. And I think it's very
right.
important. But I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here, because I do want to talk about a few more posters.
Cool.
Obviously, you mentioned this one, which is Ween, and this is something that you've worked with them for a while, and
Yeah,
we're going down a rabbit hole here for sure.
yeah, literally. Thank you very much.
And I think, is it their 20th anniversary one, or is that a different one?
No, no, they've been around longer than that. They've been around since the early '80s, I want to say.
I don't know what year this poster is from,
This is from this year, actually. That was just like a couple months ago. Yeah,
because obviously they've been around for a
yeah.
while. And I know very little about them. I
It,
can't know everything. I'm sorry.
it's
Um,
it's a thing.
but clearly, they appreciate Alice in Wonderland, from my understanding.
Yeah, that was a really fun one.
Yeah, I like this one too. I just don't want that rabbit anywhere near me. Is all I'm gonna say.
Certainly.
Yeah. So
Right.
sorry. It's like you're working. I said that too.
No,
It's a
no,
terrible thing to say.
it's a psychotic rabbit. So yeah, I wouldn't want it near me either.
And then obviously I'm just gonna throw this one up there too, because it's
Cool.
Alice in Chains, and then gotta love Alice in Chains, and this demon is something else.
Thanks.
I
Thanks.
I, I kind of like that.
Yeah, I saw those guys in tiny clubs back in the day with Lane, and that was yeah, I love that band. I did a T-shirt for them back in on Facelift on that first album's tour too. It was a silly T-shirt, but it was pretty fun. It was a European because European tours was what they were touring on. It was in Europe, and so it's called European on My Head Tour. And it's a cherub peeing on some guy's head that looks like roughly just some grunge guy. And it wasn't my idea. That was the band's idea.
It,
Yeah.
it it's it reminds me of a very, very, very funny Scotty Young cover.
Okay.
Scotty Young did a cover for curse words, and Wizard is
Oh,
peeing on a Gryffindor scarf and glasses and a witch's hat, and the
right.
pee instead is magic, and it's like obliterated. It's a
That's
really funny
that's
comic,
funny.
and it's like a $30 book on eBay when it was like $4 when it first came out. So it's
Right.
it's
That's funny.
but it's a brilliant book. And then another iconic band, I think this is them, is Radiohead.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
I only know Radiohead because of South Park.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey, it's one of the greatest episodes. It's Scott Tenorman Must Die.
I don't think I've seen that one, honestly.
Oh my God, it's brilliant. Cartman basically makes Scott Tenorman eat his parents, and he tricks him into eating his parents. And like
That sounds funny.
it's one of the greatest episodes ever of Eric Cartman. It's so brilliant. And
That's
Radiohead was actually in the episode, which is even funny. Like the
that's
voice is
cool.
brilliant. But what's the story behind this one? Because This is cool, and I'm a Radiohead fan.
Thanks. That was, I mean, this was, they were supporting their first big album, which was the Bends. And I really didn't know that much about the band. I mean, it was right at the time that they were starting to launch on MTV with big, videos for this album. And this is one of those ones where I literally did a pun as a poster, which I don't do that often anymore. So it's a guy with a radio for a head. Woo, concept. Let me tell you on that one. But it was fun, and people still really like this one, and it's iconic, and it goes for a lot of money in the aftermarket now. So it was fun.
So how does that make you feel that like your work goes for money in the aftermarket? Because I have a colleague and an acquaintance who hates that his books go for more money than what
Oh,
he charged
interesting.
for his Kickstarter.
Hmm.
And I take the different approach where I'm like, isn't that good for your business though? Like, isn't it good that if you sell a poster for $100 and then
Yeah.
I'm selling it for 150, doesn't that mean that the next time you sell a poster, someone's like, he's selling it for 100, I should probably buy it quickly. Is my thought on it, at
I
least.
mean, it's definitely not a bad little ego stroke, but I don't really let my ego get too involved because I've seen every side of this business. I've seen, you put out something that you think is amazing, and then it's crickets. Not anyone's interested in it. You know what I mean? You sell a few, and then I've had times where it's something that I think is okay, and it's not the best thing I've ever done, and then it sells out. So I can't get too wrapped up in it in that regard. But I'm not mad about my stuff going for more over time. You know what I mean? It's cool. Especially it makes sense, especially as things get older. You know what I mean? That they would go up in value for sure. The immediate flip thing's always kind of weird, because you'll have someone that buys something and they literally post it on eBay the same day of the sale. Like they didn't even got the item yet. They're already selling it on eBay. So that's a weird thing, but it's part of the game. It's part of the world. I just don't let myself get worked up about these things that much, honestly.
Yeah,
I
well,
just,
I'm guilty of being a flipper. I'm
well, I mean, it's a thing.
but you know what is the item sells out and then somebody wants it, and I'm not here to screw somebody, but I deserve to make a little bit of money if it's already sold out. And then also I
If
long
it's,
books too. You
I
know,
mean, for me, the only line that's weird for me is when people are selling something they haven't even gotten yet, because they're the first people that are always like, where's my poster? Where's my poster? And I'm like, oh, you're a flipper. You haven't. You're panicking that you haven't gotten your poster and you sold it on eBay, and that's the only thing that really kind of gets me at times, where I'm just like, dude, come on, chill out. Like, I know what you're doing. But
you see, I don't complain where my book is. If I sell it, I'm like, hey, look, that I didn't get the book yet either, but you know that I'm gonna get it out and have a good reputation. So all my clients who buy that stuff from me, they're like, yeah, we know we're gonna get it. We're not concerned.
right,
So if
it's
somebody takes 2 weeks to get it to me, I don't care.
it's an interesting thing because it is the collector and artist relationship is a symbiotic relationship. You know what I mean? So there there's all shades of everything. You know what I mean? There's certain people that are just buying for themselves. That's it. They have no intention of selling or whatever. And then there's people that are buying two and selling one and keeping one. So I just don't let myself get too wrapped up in all that because I'm just doing art and selling it. And I, the pleasure that I get in it is mostly doing the work itself. You know what I mean? Hearing the accolades after the fact is super cool, and seeing
And
stuff super
also,
cool.
I would imagine that also you're very happy because you want the band to be happy with it, and if it benefits
Oh,
the band too. So,
for sure.
like, that's the other thing is that you have a client to please as well. Where if the band's happy with it and the poster takes 3 months to sell out, but the band's happy with it and they're not angry with you or dissatisfied with your work, and I say, hey, can you do 2 more posters for us? That's the other thing too is that your client isn't just the fan, it's also the band. And I
Right.
think that's something that you're not servicing just somebody like me who wants a poster. You're also saying, hey, so and so wants something. You've done stuff for Blink 182, and you have to make sure they're happy. and
Right.
obviously this is, you know, Blink 182, and you have to make sure they're happy, and this is another
Yep.
one. And I
Hmm.
think that's the other thing as well, that is the relationship too, is that
Right.
you have two types of relationships. You have a relationship with me because I'm a fan, and you have a relationship with Blink 182. In this case, obviously, this example, which is the band.
Right.
But I mean,
Yeah. It's always a cool feeling to hear from the merch person or the road manager and to hear that something is sold out. It's always a cool feeling because that's my job. You know what I mean? That's what I do. So that's the initial like big like cool, nice.
and this thing is just super, super dope. And this was
Right.
supposed to be a crazy concert. I mean, the All American Rejects. I haven't
I
heard
bet.
that band in forever.
Right.
And obviously, it's all the small things in life, right?
Right.
Tripping poster on that one. And this
Thanks.
is actually my favorite poster that you've done.
Oh, that's awesome. Right on. Cool.
I like this, and I don't know who these people are,
Right.
which is even
This was
crazy.
actually this was my brother's band in Seattle back in the early 2000s, late 90s, like the Fakes. And he was the bass player and backup singer. And I designed all the imagery for the band. I designed the logo. And this was just a show at a bar in Seattle. It was the Comet Tavern. And that's my ex-wife who posed for that as well. So it was a kind of a family affair, the whole thing all the way around. I used to promote his band for him. And so yeah, always fun. So that's cool to hear that that's your favorite poster. That's awesome.
See, what I like about it is that I like that it's so like toned, if that makes any sense. Where there's
Yeah,
very few colors in this.
yeah,
There's
for
black,
sure.
there's like a light blue, there's a little bit of a darker blue, and then there's like a purple, and then a little bit of white. And so it's like almost got a chromatic, like blue
Mhm.
chromatic, purple tone to it. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. And I also like the fact that kind of looks like a stamp to some degree. And
Oh
it
yeah,
just is fun. And I feel like if I put it up on my wall and I was doing a podcast, like if I put it up like right behind me, people be like, that's cool. That's actually a sweet background. Like, and
thanks.
that's what I think is fascinating about this, is that it's just like it's very intriguing to me, and I don't know why, but
Cool.
it's something that I just think is awesome, and I'm hoping it's in the book.
It's everything's in the book. That's one of the coolest things about this book is it's going to be a catalog for people that look for my work because you'll see everything I've done
Yeah, like something like
referring
this.
to it. Oh, thanks. That was
Something like
fun.
this is cool as fuck.
Thanks. That was fun.
There's a
Yeah.
gold version of this too, like a hollow foil, I
Yep.
think, as well.
Yeah.
I can't afford any of this. Like you're just like, why do you think I bought the book? Like seriously, like
Exactly. Well, the interesting thing about that one in particular is because Kiss is such a major band, the initial car that I put on there was like a 71 Challenger. And they said I couldn't use it because that's a brand and they'd have to get approval from Dodge because Kiss is so big to be able to use that. So they said, can you make it an ambiguous hot rod? And I was like, oh, that's tough because I'm a hot rod guy. I love old classic cars. And I was like, so I was basically given the task of creating a car that looked like a convincing hot rod from the era, but not a car from that era. So what I did was I basically merged a 71 Challenger with a 71 Camaro and merged the grill and put the hood scoops from the Camaro and made a custom like hybrid car. And no one ever mentioned anything. Everyone was like, cool car. So I feel like I did my job because no one was like, dude, that's not right, or it doesn't look cool. What is this weird car? It was kind of fun to know that I pulled that off.
see, that is so interesting that obviously I didn't even think of that. That if there's a massive band, that another brand would be, you couldn't do it. And somebody's
Right.
like, hey, man, like, we really like what you did there, but you can't do that
Yeah,
because we don't want to get in trouble. That
right.
is absolutely fascinating.
I was surprised. I mean, honestly, I thought, if it was like a new car, I could see that, but a vintage. But I get it. It's Kiss is a huge, almost corporation. You know what I mean? So they wanted to just not. even have there be the possibility of an issue. So,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I guess it's just they don't want to invite a lawsuit. I guess
right,
it
exactly.
feels
Yeah,
where it's at.
absolutely. Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy. But what is it like to have Kiss involved and do something with Kiss and
It was cool. It was
play
really cool. I
around with
mean,
that because it's fucking Kiss. I
that
mean,
was definitely like, as a kid growing up in the '70s. I mean, Kiss was the most iconic band of all. So I drew Kiss on my Peachy folders in grade school, and so to actually all these years later, I kept kind of having to stop and go like, think about the little kid in you that would be losing his mind over this, and going like, wow, this is actually pretty cool.
it must be just as cool as doing like the Kiss comics with Dynamite Comics. I mean,
Right.
it's like at that level because you know people see this and people know exactly what this poster is, and
Yeah.
that's just fucking awesome, man. Like,
Pretty wild.
I mean, and what's super cool is that I mean, I don't know, did Kiss approach you or did you approach Kiss or did it just happen that like it was one of those things where the two of you were just or whoever was in charge of Kiss was like, hey, we want Justin Hampton to do this.
It was a merchandise company, basically, because all of these big acts have merchandising entities that license their work, and then they create stuff for the band so they can make money and the band makes money. So it was a merch company, basically. Yeah. But it
But
was
even
all directly getting feedback from Gene Simmons. So Gene Simmons said that it was badass or something like that. So that was kind of cool to hear. Yeah.
but even still, the fact that you're trusted, because this is one of
Yep.
the things that obviously showing all these bands, and obviously some bands you're closer with than others. You know, Queens of the Stone Age is more of a direct relationship versus I think Kiss. But even still, there is a lot of trust in you, and
Yeah,
obviously the one you show right here, this
for
is
sure.
Snoop Dogg,
Right.
and again, it's the idea that whether you're dealing with Snoop Dogg directly or the merchandising company, there is still trust because they have to say you're a professional and that you always deliver, you deliver good work, you listen to what they want to some degree, and then it's your name, it's also your style, it's also what you got going on, and it's the fact that you're not going to fuck it up, for lack of a better word. And
Literally.
so
Yeah. And spell everything right.
that too. That too. You know what it is? It sounds funny and it sounds ridiculous, but I don't know about you. I don't know how many comic books you read. Have you ever read an indie comic book where the spelling is completely wrong?
Right.
It's not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
letters do not get enough credit. They do not
Oh
get
yeah.
enough.
No, I've the book is written and I'm having someone go through the book literally for any little spelling I might have missed because it's a real thing. Especially when you're doing that much writing, you have to have multiple people look it over, or there's going to be someone that's going to go, dude, you spelled something wrong. In fact, the PDF preview of a select few pages, a buddy of mine just reached out and was like, dude, there's misspellings in here. And I was like, I know, they're going to be fixed.
That's crazy. And then
Trey, if you're watching this, that was for you.
And then obviously, there's a million other posters, and I don't want to go through all of them here. These are just some of my favorite, but there is two more movie things I want to show. So
Cool.
there's Clutch, and I love this poster. I mean, I love the girl
Thanks.
on it. I love the girl on that thing.
Cool. Thanks. That was a fun one. That was a B movie by independent movie by a guy in Seattle a few years back, and it was fun to do what I considered like a kind of traditional '70s style movie poster that was almost like a collage, but an illustrated collage. And that one was very inspired by a blaxploitation movie poster for Cotton Comes to Harlem.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. This is almost like perfect in so many ways. Like, I kind of want this poster too now because I know it'll upset my mom. That's why I want it. And then and it'll be such a talking point because everybody's like, "Is that a comic book?" Like that's how it vibes. Like,
That's
this is how Fast
definitely
and Furious should have gone. It's like the perfect thing for Fast and Furious right here. Like, this is Fast 10, everybody. Just
right.
you put that Fast 10 right here and replace whatever they put for Fast 10. That movie will do like $6 billion. Like, easy, easy.
Thanks. It's definitely a poster for the man cave.
Oh, it's gonna go right here. It's going right here. And then the other one I want to talk about, which is something super cool as well, is this one. And
Oh, that's actually Emic. That was for a series we did together for yeah, why am I going blank on his name? The director of The Hangover, Todd Phillips. We did a mini series, and we P&E did one from each of us. So Jermaine did one, I did one, and Emic did one. That's actually Emic's poster. But yeah, cool one, for sure.
yeah. I know that
Yeah,
that you were somewhat involved with this one, and
mine
it's
was a more R-rated poster. So
yeah. I really didn't want to show it,
I get
but
it.
nonetheless, I think the whole thing with that is even getting involved in the Hangover, because I think the Hangover at the time, I don't know if there's been something that has exceeded the Hangover as a
Right.
rated R film, but it is one of the top grossing rated R films, if
Yeah.
not the. I don't know if the record's been broken, but at the time, for a while, it was.
At the time it was. Yeah, yeah. That was an interesting project. That was cool because uh Todd, even at that time, Todd was a fairly well-known, director. Now, of course, he's gone on to direct The Joker and become even bigger. But the you never know who's watching your work, because he emailed me and said, I've had this idea for years, and I really want to do a poster series for one of my movies, and this is now the biggest grossing rated R movie of all time at the time, like you said. And I'd really like to commission you and a couple other folks to do this. And my first question was, I go, okay. I wrote him back. I go, okay, if this is really Todd Phillips, I'm potentially interested. So you need to confirm that this is really him. And he wrote back, ha ha ha, this is really Todd Phillips. And I was like, okay, because you never know. I mean, someone could be messing with you. You know what I mean? Just because it's an email, it doesn't say anything necessarily official, but it was he got a kick out of that. That was kind of fun.
Oh, I'm the first person. If anybody watched an interview I did about a day ago, there was a big issue in the indie comic world where a deal was not what a deal was, and obviously people need to be very, very careful on all
Yeah,
that stuff because it is massively complicated. And but even still, I mean, what is that like for you? Because I mean, The Hangover is The Hangover, and
yeah,
it's a great movie, and it's fantastic, and it's one of
it's
those
fun.
things, you know who doesn't want to be a part of that movie in some fashion?
Right. No, it was fun. It was really, really fun. I got to meet him after the posters were all done, and I tell the story behind that as well, working with him. And there's a photo of us together. I met him in his Malibu editing studio and presented the final posters. Cool guy, super, super awesome guy. He was thrilled. He was super happy with the product.
So I have to ask, did Bradley Cooper carry that movie?
Great
Do
movie.
you know what that's from? Do you know what that's from by any chance?
No, I don't actually. What is
Okay,
that?
so Zach Galifianakis had
Oh,
Obama
okay.
on Between Two Ferns,
Between two ferns.
and then Obama presses a button, and behind they're in like a backdrop of the White House. And Zach
Right.
says, "Oh yeah, George Bush has allowed us to be here since the Iraq War started." And then Barack Obama, without a beat, says, "Yeah, well, Bradley Cooper carried you throughout all three of those movies," and it's
Yeah, yeah, that was funny. I do remember that now. Actually, yeah, that was funny.
brilliant,
That's
brilliant from
like
Obama.
the most awkward show ever recorded. Like, and
It
it's
was so
every episode
brilliant.
is awkward. Yeah,
His timing was epic, and you tell I think Zach was just a little shocked and oh my god, but also it was brilliant,
yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And Obama is just so spot on. Like that guy is so good at timing.
yeah. That was great. That was funny.
But I digress on that one, and that's why I had to ask because I don't know if it's true if Bradley Cooper carried, but Ed Helms was great in that too.
That's funny.
And then obviously I want to show three more things that I think are super cool, and obviously very sad about Amy Winehouse.
Yeah.
And this is cool, and then this is part of that. Also sad about Chris Cornell, and obviously sad about Prince. But what are these like? Because obviously these are Prince and very music iconic, and
Right.
I also think it shows a different side of what you can do because it's not a poster, but it's also very poster-esque.
Yeah, I mean, those are what I consider art prints, which are just done for no one but myself. And Cornell had such a big impact on Seattle and music in general. And
I think it's almost 5 years today.
yeah, it
Around
is.
this time.
Yeah, it's really wild. Um, and yeah, such a soundtrack of my youth. You know what I mean? That was. I saw so many Soundgarden shows, and it was always, in the repertoire of stuff that I rotated. It still is. I mean, so I don't like putting stuff out like directly after someone passes away. It's hard for me to even wrap my mind around doing something like that because it's so fresh. I usually wait if I'm going to do something for someone like that. I usually wait a few years. So I think I put that one out last year, and same with the Prince one. And part of the reason I put those out was because the pandemic was raging and there was no shows. I wasn't doing art for concerts because there were no concerts. So I was like, well, let's do an art print for some of these people that I admire, and that's how those came about. The Prince one I actually worked on for a long time, for years, just kind of plugging away on it because I was never quite happy with it. And so I finally dropped that one, and I was really happy with the response.
And I don't know if these are in the book, but yeah, obviously they're very cool. And I think a lot of people, especially Chris Cornell, people know Prince, and people know Amy Winehouse, and I think people are very connected to this stuff, And you've done other things. I think you've done some stuff to Led Zeppelin and some others. But the reason why I wanted to show these three is that obviously all three of these people died way too young.
Yeah.
Amy Winehouse died way too young. Chris Cornell died young. And Prince, also died somewhat young.
Right.
And it's very much a tragedy in a lot of ways. And best Prince moment was the Super Bowl. It was raining. He said, I'm performing anyway.
Right.
Smart move by Prince.
Most impressive Super Bowl show ever. There will never be a more impressive show than that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's singing what was it, like Purple Rain, I want to say, or and it's raining out. Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
and just the water's coming down. Oh, what a great, like just shot perfectly.
Yeah. Unbelievable talent, that guy. There will be releases of new Prince work, from his archives for 50 years. He produced so much work.
It's crazy. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, he just lived and breathed music, constantly recording.
And then I lied because there actually is one more thing I want to talk about, and I'm a huge Magic the Gathering fan.
Okay, cool.
I have a Goblin deck, guys, and 5 turns and you die. It's the point of the deck. 5 turns. Seriously, it's a sick deck. Pretty much, I play a Goblin, and on turn 2, I can shoot at all these miniature goblins essentially because I have cards that reduce my goblin costs. So now I could summon like 9 Goblin Kings. So now my 1/1 Goblin is like a 10/10 out of nowhere. It is savage the deck. And then I have a Spike Shot Goblin that if my opponent has a mountain, I can just directly attack your life. So now my Spike Shot Goblin is like a 7/7, and like 3 turns later and you're dead. It's great.
And what's funny about the wizard stuff is that stuff that I did forever ago. I never played. I only did the illustrations. I knew a ton of the guys that did that stuff. They went to Cornish art school, and I was in that same circle of friends that were like around. And I remember Anson Maddox. I ran into him one night at a bar, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing these game cards, are you looking for any gigs? Do you want to do this thing? And I was like, I've always been more into the rock thing. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I get it because, Frazetta obviously did both fantasy stuff and rock stuff. And I was like, yeah, it sounds cool. I'm into it. So I did it, but I only did those illustrations. I never delved into the world of play. To this day, I've never played a single Magic game.
You probably save yourself hundreds, if not
Oh
thousands
yeah,
of dollars.
I know it's another obsession, and I don't need any more obsessions.
All I know is that if you have an Alpha Black Lotus card, that's like a $500,000 card.
Yeah,
It's
right.
insane. Like
It really is. Yeah, it's again like the collector's thing that we've been talking about. It's one more world that's really, really wild. Yeah, in fact, I didn't do much more than a few sets, and I just put those cards in my basement, and I never really thought about it again. And so I've been hanging on to these cards for all these years, and I just recently, the last couple of years, pulled some out to offer, and I got invited to be a part of a show in Italy, in Lucca, Italy, to sell cards and sign cards, and it was the very first con I've ever been to for any of that stuff, and it was awesome. I mean, they paid my way out there. I got to stay in Lucca and Florence for like a week, and the response from people that came to get cards from me was super overwhelming. But it was like a whole new experience because I just never took part in it. I did it, and then I got back to my rock work.
See, it's so interesting, and obviously, I'm on the other side where I'm buying cards, I'm selling cards, I buy comics. I know all the stuff with Pokemon. I know all the cards that are expensive. I pull packs, and like I understand. And look, I'm a collector too, where a lot of what I do is that it's both investing as well as it, I guess, continues my hobby. And I mean, I love all this stuff, and that's why I find this stuff so fascinating. And it's just mind-boggling to me, like because also what's happening with Magic is that you have people like Jen Bartel, you have people like Daniel Johnson, and it's other people in comics are now being solicited by Magic the Gathering and by Wizard to do cards. And so it's just super interesting how the saying is that, the cream always rises to the top and talent always winds up being found. And that's what's so interesting about you is that like you're in everything. And that is fascinating. That's what like your book is about. And that's why I wanted to talk to you. That's why like I hit you up and I was just looking. I'm like, oh man, he's got a Kickstarter. This is perfect. And full disclosure, I was terrified to figure out even how to write this. I mean, I spent like a good 2 hours writing my first question.
That's cool.
The rest of the interview took care of itself within 45 minutes. But that first like question legitimately took me 2 hours to write. But obviously, I mean, we've been speaking for like an hour and a half, and I don't want to keep you indefinitely. But obviously, I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote and where can people find you? Where can people bother you? Where can people pick up original art? Where can people pick up posters? Because I know that you sell some stuff, but other people, I think, what is it, D Kings or DJ Kings sell some stuff.
There's a lot of places that sell, yeah.
All that fun stuff. Obviously, the Kickstarter, I want to push that out. Also, go through what is still available on the Kickstarter because I know the book's available. I know you can get it digitally. It is $100 book, but it is 400 pages plus. At this point, it is hardcover. Does it come in a bookcase too, like a cardboard bookcase?
There's going to be a slipcase. That's on the Kickstarter. There's the $100 tier is the book itself. There's another tier of signed and numbered edition of 1,000. That's 150, and then there's an edition of only 50 that are signed and numbered with a personalized sketch in each one, and that was 300. And there's a handful of those left. Those are the main tiers. There's the poster of the book cover. There's a Nirvana poster. There's a sticker pack. There's a bunch of stuff. That's what's happening on the Kickstarter. We're going to do a thing now every week where every Friday we're going to unveil something special, something rare, maybe original art, maybe rare prints that are hard to find. So we're going to continue that throughout the length of the Kickstarter for a month. My work can be found on my website, justinhampton.com. And speaking specifically about the Wizards of the Coast stuff, the Magic stuff, I decided not to include any of that stuff in this book because it's already a 400-page book. And my rock stuff, my illustration stuff, all has a similar crossover. You know what I mean? A lot of music magazine type stuff work. So what the plan is, though, is to do a smaller addendum book later that's just my wizard stuff that will go into sketches and preliminary paintings, even all that kind of stuff. It'll be a smaller book, probably 100 pages, but that will be its own thing later. So yeah, I had to figure out somewhere to break this up, because if I didn't, it was going to be like a 600-page book. That's just too much. So this first, that next.
And obviously, well, you got like 27 days as of May 18th.
Yeah.
So, and I'll say this as well, where if you want to get something, you don't have to pay for it now on Kickstarter. You get charged at the end.
Right.
So
Exactly.
obviously, if you're like, oh my God, it's $100 book, I get paid on Friday. You're not getting billed every week.
Right.
On Indiegogo, they collect the money up front. On this one and on Kickstarters, they do not. So you could pledge as early as you want, and then you get involved. Also, there's something going on for the first 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, free sticker for all the orders for the first 48 hours.
So obviously, if you want a free sticker and you say, hey, I don't know if I want the $100 book or the 150 or the 300, obviously you could also change your pledge at any given point. So that's something to keep in mind as well. That
Right.
you could get in, you could just pledge $1 and then change your pledge later on as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Cool.
So that's important. It's just
Yeah.
Kickstarter 101. But also, what I'm going to keep on saying to people is that obviously, big goal. I think you're going to fund. It looks like you're going to fund. You have plenty of time. It
Yeah,
usually,
just looking right now, and it's 31,000, so I'm only 9,000 off now, which is awesome. Day two.
and there's a bunch of apps that are going to give you an idea of what you're going to do. I forget where it is, but there's like a Kickstarter tracker. It's actually super interesting.
Right.
But one of the things that obviously I'm going to keep on saying is that everybody on Kickstarter to some degree is an indie creator. And so it is very important to back indie projects.
Absolutely.
And so obviously if you throw $1, you could just get it digitally because you might not have a place to put it. If you throw $1, it goes a long way. You throw $5, or you could pick up the actual physical copy of the book. But if you're in a tight position and money's not necessarily available to you, sharing it out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, messaging somebody. If you run a music magazine, you can do a write-up about it. All that stuff is beyond helpful, and it is just as important as pledging because it gets more eyes on a project.
Definitely.
And while money is necessary, and I know all about that, also media is necessary as well. And
Absolutely.
so you should be definitely sharing it out. You should be hopefully pledging because this is going to be an awesome book. And obviously, and hopefully you got some stretch goals once you get past the 40,000. I'm hoping you do.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm excited to see it. But also even going further, obviously sharing it out is massively important and it's just as valuable as
For sure.
So that's something that I'm going to encourage everybody to do. Also, just quickly about me, obviously, all my social media is down there. It's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook. I appreciate liking my stuff, sharing my page out, following me on Instagram, following me on Twitter. My DMs are open if you want to bother me. Also, I have a t-shirt up on Redbubble. I do appreciate if you like Gundam. I made the shirt for people who actually want it. It's made to order. It's print on demand. So they handle all that. You can pick whatever color you want. You could put it on a mini skirt because I approve. I have an eBay store, so you can check that out, Pop Anime Comics Collectibles. And I appreciate people just sharing this stuff out and checking people's Kickstarters out and letting people know, hey, it's a really cool interview. And obviously Justin Hampton is a legendary poster artist who pretty much has been doing this forever. And I'm going to just leave it at that. And this is a book that I'm going to recommend people get. I have backed it in the first day, and I would not be telling any of my fans if I did not believe that this was a really cool book. Please don't make me look like a fool. Having said that, but I'm actually very excited for this book, and so I do recommend people check it out. because it's going to be awesome. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Cool. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate the support and wanting to do the interview. And yeah, I appreciate everyone that takes part in the Kickstarter and wants to support this thing and bring it to life. And it's my life's work to this point. So it's really cool to see finally come together. And hopefully there'll be another one at some point down the line. But for now, I just had to stop at 400 pages.
Well,
So thanks again for everyone that tuned in.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it any better myself, everybody. That is a wrap.